Magic Hour Cross Stitch Supplies. I'm Donna.
I'm Serena.
I'm the mom.
I'm the daughter.
And we together have a lovely little shop, Magic Hour Cross Stitch Supplies, online, on Etsy, on Facebook, pretty much anywhere you want to look. Just Google us and you'll find us.
Don't
Oh yeah, we don't do
us.
Twitter, but we do Instagram. Anyway, we are here today to stitch and talk about different aspects of cross stitch. That's what our podcast is about.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just going to go ahead and tell you what I'm working on right now. It's a free SAL. A SAL is a stitch along, and often at the beginning of the year and sometimes throughout the year, different designers will release a big pattern in parts. So everybody gets the part at the same time, usually, once a month, say.
Is it always a mystery?
Yes. I have never seen one that's not a mystery. Because
Okay.
if it's not a mystery, you just go ahead and stitch the whole thing.
Well, I mean, you could do like a picture of it and then release the pattern.
Most of the ones that I've seen and done, they show you a picture, but the parts that haven't been released yet are kind of grayed out or fuzzed out. So you can't see the whole thing.
Okay.
So that's a stitch along. It's a mystery stitch along, and most of them are like that.
Okay.
So this one in particular was released by peppermintpurple.com, and they have some beautiful blackwork patterns.
And where did you find this, Sal?
I found it on Facebook. So
Okay.
they have a Facebook group, so people can show their pictures of their SAL as they go along. And now blackwork is basically, it's like all back stitching, but in a shape so that it makes little geometric designs. So it could be flowery, it could be like a brick wall. So some of them are very, very intricate and detailed.
Yeah, almost embroidery-like.
Yeah, they come out looking like lace. Well, there's no fancy stitches. It's just black back stitch. There's no specialty stitches.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm working on that SAL. This is a weekly SAL rather than a monthly one. So
Are they usually monthly?
I've always seen monthly ones. Yeah, I think monthly would be the norm.
Okay.
But this one is weekly because it's got they give you the outline of the picture, so you can put in the borders and whatever structure you need to do in the pictures, the little monthly pictures or weekly pictures. This one is just bricks, like a brick wall. But I like to do my own thing, so they did give some border choices. I picked a border, but then I took some detail from another SAL that I'm also doing.
Your SALs.
I do love my SALs. They're just butterflies. I put a big butterfly in each corner, and I'm doing a border in between the butterflies. So that's what I'm working on. What are you working on, Serena?
I'm working on two projects at the moment. I put one aside temporarily to work on this one, which shouldn't take long. It's heart hands. It's let me look to see how big it is, because it's like maybe 25 by like 45.
Yeah, it's not very big.
It's not very big at all, but I'm doing it in A12 on 14 count opalescent, so that's fun. It's for a friend of mine a friend of the family that I'm going to turn into a little pencil case in preparation for another project that I'm going to turn into another pencil case for a friend of mine who just started college. That one is again an opalescent, but it's over 1 on 28 count opalescent. And it's a book. I think the artist is Hall Stitch. I think Hall Stitch did it on Etsy. So check out their patterns. They're very good. This is my first one of theirs, but it's a very good pattern. I really like it.
Okay, and tell me again about the thread and the fabric you're using there.
I'm using A12 on opalescent, on 14 count opalescent.
Okay, tell us what that means.
Well, A12 is, it was new a couple years ago, so it's not so much new now. They probably come up with all kinds of stuff since then. But it's a new thread from DMC that, as opposed to metallics, is sparkly as opposed to shiny, and it's much easier to work with. I can work with this for days, whereas I can't work with light effects. It's not something I am capable of doing.
Yeah, a lot of people have a problem with light effects. I have not had much difficulty, but we're going to do another podcast on that subject at a later date. So we'll put that aside for the moment. But the opalescent fabric is very pretty. Tell us about that.
It's constructed, it seems like, much in the same way that a toile is, in that it's a single shiny filament in between regular thread. So it looks very sparkly. Not shiny, but sparkly. And it's very pretty. It's kind of akin to snow, fresh snow on a sunny day. If you wanted to put a visual to it.
It is very pretty.
Because this is an all audio medium.
Well, it is lovely, and your project is going to look very nice. I'm sure your friend is going to love it. I'm using a 14 count fabric that is a little sturdier than most. It's not a Zweigart. I can't tell you what it is because I don't remember. I've had this fabric in my stash for a while, but it was the right size and the right color and everything, so I decided to use this. But I'm going to...
Oh yeah, and my thing is Zweigart.
Oh yeah, your fabric is Zweigart. I've done all the bricks, so to speak, all the little frames for my black work, and I've done the 4 butterflies, each in a different color. My fabric is kind of an off-white, kind of a crew, so I chose earth tones for my palette. But for the border that I love stitching borders, so of course I got to have a border. And what I chose was some variegated. So I'm using variegated right now, even as we speak. And what I like about it is that the colors, okay, so I'm using variegated, not colorless or variations. These are just your basic variegated flosses that have been around for ages.
Are they DMC or Anchor?
You know what? These ones, I have a lot. These ones are DMC.
69 and 99, definitely
definitely DMC. Not all of my flosses are labeled with numbers and fancy stuff like that.
As Mom scratches her arm. For the world to hear.
Sorry. Because some I get given to me, some I pick up here and there. I get it from all sources, and some I've had in my stash for years and years and years. I don't even know where I got them all, but I love them all just the same. So I go more by what color I want in a given situation than I don't know why, but it's not very often you see very much variegated called for in a pattern.
Well, it's hard to control for.
It is hard to control. So what I have discovered is this. So I have this effect going. So the framework for my black work is long and narrow. So think tall rectangle. So what I did was, because it shades, the first one I did was shades from brown to kind of an orangey yellow. So I got my piece, I cut my piece of thread. Black work is done usually with a single strand. So I took out my piece of strand, and I started with the dark end. So I have the brown is in the middle of, because I started stitching in the middle of the width at the top here.
Is that typical for borders?
I usually you just start from one end and go to the other.
Yeah, that's what I thought, because that's how we design borders, and I know you design differently than you stitch, but
well, if without the variegated, that's what I would do. It's just start from one end and go to the other, because it doesn't matter. But with variegated, you have to think about where your colors are going to end up. If you just if you're just doing like a block of regular cross stitches, and you just fill it in with variegated or or any of them, variations, colorless, anchor, any of them would be the same. If you're going across, your finished piece, that big block, would be striped. So if you're stitching across, your stripes would be horizontal. If you stitch up and down, your stripes will be vertical. So depending on what variation colors you have, you'd have, like, if you're doing blue, for instance, you'd go light blue, then it would shade to a medium blue and then to a dark blue, but the appearance would be stripes. If you can even do it diagonally, you'd get diagonal stripes in your block. If you can control where your shading comes in, then you can make some pretty cool effects. On my border here, I started in the middle because I want I want it to look what do you call that? Symmetrical. I want it to look symmetrical. So I started in the middle and worked my way to the corner, to one corner, and then with a fresh piece, starting with the same end I did with the first one, I worked from the middle again back out to the side. So they would both have equal amounts of like shading from brown to orange. So I did that again on the side here, and it's working out really well. I'll do that on all four sides to get that kind of a shading, dark in the middle out to the lighter on the corners.
Think Photoshop gradient.
A gradient in Photoshop. Okay, I didn't think of that, but yeah, that's kind of what it is. Or ombre colorings. That's been very fashionable lately, where it's very light and shades down to a dark. You see it in scarves and clothes and fabrics, cross-stitch fabrics and stuff. Yeah, I did a couple pieces like that. I did one for Judy like that. Anyway, that's one way to use variegated flosses. But I also recently did a project for a friend, and it was mostly text. It was a little folder, like a wallet, we'll say, and it had a little very short saying in big letters on each of the four sides, the two outside, two inside. And so the letters were fairly big, so fairly good size number of stitches.
That's very important.
Yes, it is. It's hard to use variegated flosses if the area is too small, because there's not enough time for the floss to change color. So you need a fairly big number of stitches to get through it, and that number will change depending on the floss. So you have to actually open it up and pull out a stretch and see how far it is to stitch. And of course, the count of your fabric will affect that as well. But I was using I think it was an 18 count, and what I did was I followed the flow of the letter. So, for instance, the S, I didn't do all the vertical ones in a row and like that, like go from left to right. I started at one end of the letter and kind of traced the letter in the stitches so that the shading changes would be consistent, like throughout the letter. Instead of a stripe of change, it would actually look like it changed like that. So the effect at the end was actually pretty good. I was really happy with how it turned out. So there's a couple of factors. The best way to get to know how to use variations and variegated,
it's probably to use variegation.
It is. That's exactly how to use it. So it's fun to just pick something small and just stitch a bunch of hearts or kisses, or pick something.
Stitch a kiss?
Oh, that's some lips, some hearts, some rainbows. Pick something. Doesn't really matter. Some shapes. Pick some easy shapes. You'd probably want to have like blocks of at least 10 by 10, probably 20 by 20 would be better. See how they turn out. Or even not better, do some letters, because that's really where I started to really get a handle on how to make it look really good.
Yeah, but it wouldn't start there.
I mean
Yeah.
big balloon letters.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't mean letters like in blackwork or something. I mean,
No, I don't mean letters in blackwork. I mean, like, the way you're describing to do letters sounds fairly complex. I can't imagine how you did it, and I saw you do it.
uh, well, for instance, if you're writing an A, a
Mm-hmm.
letter A, you
Yeah.
start at the bottom, up to a point and down, and then do the cross. Okay, so stitch in that order.
Yeah, but if
The
it's big,
full width of the letter.
yeah, but it would still be back and forth.
Yeah, you still go back and forth. Oh, yes, that's another important point. You don't go like most people. Well, I don't know if most people, but anyway, many people.
If you do this, write in.
When you're stitching a row of stitches with regular stitching, you might go all the way across, and then you cover your stitches with the second leg all the way back, right? So it's
Mm-hmm.
some people always do one X at a time. Some
I
people do the halves and then come back and do the other half. I'm that type. I do the half and then the other half. Serena does the X's.
Yes.
With variegated or variations, you really need to do the full X at a time if you want to have the full effect of the variegations. If you want to tone
this
that
really
down,
needs to be surged.
what?
This really needs to be surged. I keep
Oh, is it
sewing
pretty?
in. Yeah, I keep sewing in bits of it into my project.
Cut that off. There. Scissors. Anyway, if you want the full effect of the variations, then you need to do one full X at a time. If you want to tone it down and have less strong changes, then go ahead and do the half a stitch and then come back and cross all your stitches. So that's all that we know about. Well, that's a good part of what we know about variegated. I'm sure as soon as we hang up, we will think of a bunch of other stuff about stitching and variations.
Send a phone call, Mom.
Yeah, I know. It just feels like one. It feels like I'm talking to one of my sisters. But anyway, so if you have any questions about using variations or variegated, please write in. We would love to hear from you. And
what's our Facebook?
our Facebook is facebook.com/magichourcrossstitch.
Okay.
Very easy to remember.
Indeed. So that's where people can get a hold of us if they want.
Yeah, you can message me from there, and we can answer any questions either one-on-one or post a question right on Facebook. We'd love that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Serena, did you have any questions about using variations?
Besides writing, what is the best use of variegated?
That's a good question. I'm still exploring that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really enjoying it for the border, but you'd have to have a fairly substantial border to make it visible that it's variations, either in like a heft of the actual border, how many stitches in an inch sort of thing, like a Teresa Wentzler type thing. Although hers, I don't believe, include variations.
I don't think so.
Or long enough for the variations to show. So in
Mom,
this
this
case,
is an audio medium, but it's
I'm
picking it up.
sorry. I keep forgetting that anytime I touch the table, it shows up on the mic. Okay. So borders is good. Letters is good. Anywhere where you get to pick the colors of your project, you could probably put in a variations.
But depends on the size, right?
It depends on the size. You would really want to have a fairly significant sized area to do. So if, for instance, these butterflies the wings are like, I don't know, 10 stitches wide at the widest, and they're about, they're shaped triangular, but they're about 10 stitches high. I could use variegated with that if I was going to fill them in with regular stitches. In this case, I would probably do like a spiral pattern on my stitching, because it's like a regular shape, and it doesn't have to be perfectly spiral or anything, but just to make the stitches a little more random, so the variegation is random. That's what I would want to go for. Butterflies, you could do stripes, and it would look really nice. And for some things, like You could also use it if you were doing, I'm doing another sal. You've probably heard of the Linens and Threads Mystery Sal. I'm doing still last year's, working on it. And it has a couple little squirrels in it. And I could do those squirrels in a nice variegated brown, for instance.
That one I brought home from the shop. What is it called?
4145.
That's the one.
That's a variations.
It's a DMC variation.
A DMC variations. And that would work very well because it's some nice creamy medium nut browns. So I could just use that, fill in the squirrel, and it would look great. It would look like real fur. And that's probably what some patterns use variations for too, is for things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a good question. I don't know any other things that are off the top of my head that I would use variations for. But I do like to use them. It's one of my favorite things to use. I guess because of the exercise in choice.
Mm-hmm.
Of how just using the thread is not the same as how it comes out. You have to decide how to use it. So there's a little bit of choice in every stitch, you might say. And that's appealing to me. Okay.
I think I told you about this. But on DeviantArt, I'm on DeviantArt a lot. And I'm in a few stitching groups there. And one of them, this was posted like years ago, so I doubt I could be able to find it again. But it was a silhouette of a deer and a tree and a moon all in black. And then in like camo green variegated, they did vertical stripes in a circle. Like the whole pattern was a circle and they did vertical stripes for the sky. And it looked stripy and it looked almost Northern Lights-ish, but the wrong colors. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that actually I have seen a lot of silhouette type patterns that use variations.
Well, it's not the silhouette was black, but the background was.
And yeah, the background. That would look so cool.
But it was all vertical stripes. I think you could not buy the pattern, but buy the actual stitching. So I didn't follow the Etsy link, but
nice.
Yeah,
that's a good idea. Be a great way to use variations or variegated. And the silhouette ones too. I've seen that. In fact, I just finished another project. As I said, I had plenty of stitching time. That I did a fairy. It was a silhouette fairy with some leaves and a moon and that sort of thing. And I did her wings and in a variegated. I think I did the leaves in a variegated too.
I think you did the leaves in a toile.
Yeah, you're right. I did. Anyway, the whole project was in a toile and metallics. The fairy and the wings, metallics. So we're going to talk about that another time. It was a great project. But that sort of silhouette pattern, they're quite popular. I've seen lots of different variations on that type of theme. And they all come out looking really nice. Sometimes it's the silhouette that's stitched in variations and sometimes the background.
Mm-hmm.
But that is a very good use for variations. But you have to think ahead how you want the color changes to look before you start stitching. So that's one of the big things for variations is think ahead of how you want the finished thing to look. What?
Was that me making that sound?
The pulling sound? My fabric is quite heavy and it makes a noise when I pull the thread through. Sorry. It's not even touching the table.
Well, no, it's not the table. It could be touching your headphones or something. Or it could be me. I think it's actually me. Because opalescent can be very rough. Because of the filaments in the fabric.
Mm-hmm.
But a toile is very soft, so...
Yeah, why don't you talk about that a little bit, actually? Because that's étoiles are getting more popular. We're seeing them in more patterns.
Really, I've never seen them in a pattern, but I don't do a lot of shopping for patterns.
I don't either, but I do a lot of Facebooking, and I see a lot of people's projects. So, well, we'll probably talk about étoile at a later time as well, because we kind of used up most of the episode on the variations. We don't want to make it too long.
Yeah.
But we do have a couple of questions.
Okay.
If I put this down on the table, it's going to make a loud noise. So let's not. Okay. Nancy from Tacoma, Washington contacted us, and she wanted to know what to do with finishes. So if you don't want to frame a project,
and who does?
Well, a lot of people like to frame, and we can talk about framing. That's a whole other story. But what other choices do you have? You said you're going to make pencil cases out of your projects.
Yeah, I have 2 projects that I'm going to make a pencil case out of.
Okay, and how are you going to do that?
Well, I'm going to use the actual stitching as an applique, not like a waste canvas thing, but like stitch it on fabric and then cut it out, and then applique that sewing on top of another fabric onto the pencil case, like some fabric that I would then turn into a pencil case.
Okay, so you got some cotton fabric or whatever, and you're going to have a pencil case made out of that with your cross-stitching appliqued onto it.
Yes, but I was just explaining what applique is, because just because someone cross-stitch doesn't mean they sew.
That's true. Okay. And both of these are pencil case projects?
Yeah, I mean, I could probably stretch a point and turn this one into a glasses case.
Okay.
But it's basically a fabric pouch with a zipper.
Right.
She can put whatever she wants in there. She can put gum in there if she wants. I'm not going to dictate what she does with it.
Or her stitching supplies. You never know. Okay, how about your Awela project? Serena, tell us about your Awela project.
That one is from... What magazine did you get?
It's a Just Cross Stitch.
Just Cross Stitch
magazine.
I think it was like May 2017 or something like that.
Way back there a bit.
But so it's this like a circle in a square pattern that looks like stained glass, and it's called the Tree of Life. Not sure into what religion they're putting that in, because there's a Tree of Life in almost every religion. But and it's very pretty. It's got like a lot of jewel colors, a lot of blues, lots of pinks, purples. And we had these hand-dyed bags that did turn out great for selling. So we just kind of had them. And I was going to put it on that and give it to her, applique it on that and give it to her. And then we gave my sister, who's an artist, a bunch of bags. And she came home for Christmas. And she had exactly one of these tote bags done up with these beautiful flowers. And the stems were amazing. And it almost looked 3D. And it's like, I can't give her a bag now. So I have no idea what I'm going to turn this into.
Well, whatever it is, I'm sure Layla will love it. And we can look up the designer of that beautiful pattern later and make sure that you have the information if you want it.
Okay.
Sorry, I don't remember who that is.
It's on the pattern, but I don't have my pattern with me in the recording setup, so.
Yeah, because we were working on something else. Something else bumped it.
Yep.
Don't forget her birthday's in May, though. June. Anyway, so, and you don't know what you're going to do with that one.
Not a clue.
Okay, well, I don't know what I'm going to do with this one yet either. But it's a long rectangle, as I said, so I might, turn it into a little table runner or something, I'm thinking. I was going to do a bag, but a tall, skinny bag doesn't look so great. But with my other one, the Peacock Garden of the linens and threads one, I'll probably do a bag with that one.
You could do a long, skinny bag horizontally.
I guess I could.
In black work, there's no up or down.
Well, that's true too. Other things that I have done with finishes, I have done bags. I've done pillows. We've done hangings. Trying to think what other stuff.
You framed one.
I have framed, yeah. I've used both mounting boards and lacing for framing. Done some little cards. And some I just roll up and say, here, I did this. Oh, and I don't forget the little wallet thing I made. Yeah.
Wallet thing?
Yeah, for Nancy.
Oh, right.
Yeah, but I don't know if you can post pictures on the Podbean thing, but Podbean.
I have no idea.
If we can, we'll show you pictures of our projects. But we'll
If not,
post them on. We'll put them on Facebook anyway.
If not, we have plans to put the audio for this on YouTube, and we'll post pictures in the video.
That's a great idea. We'll do that. Okay. Does that answer the question? What was the question? The question was what to do with finishes. So there's some ideas, and there are as many ideas as there are people out there.
Yeah, I personally don't start a project unless I know what I'm going to do with it.
Yeah, that's always better to know what your finish is going to be when you start, because that kind of dictates your fabric choice, which is the subject of another podcast. Okay, one more question. Ruth from Estevan, Saskatchewan, asked about the difference between DMC and Anchor floss. And that's a very good question, Ruth. We carry both in our shop. We have full sets of both. I use the Anchor floss quite a bit. I tend to really like it. They are both technically they are both the same. So they are both long staple Egyptian cotton floss with that have been mercerized, which is a process that makes it more color fast and more more lustrous, and also burns away. They burn away the little tiny little hairy floss floss or thread bits that make it fuzzy, so that it's smooth and you get nice detail. So they're produced in much the same way. I find, my opinion is that the Anchor tends to be just that little bit more lustrous. The color's just a little bit more rich. The color families tend to be bigger. So where in DMC you might have maybe a run of 4 or 5 colors in a row that kind of graduate from one shade to another up through like a series of browns, for instance. In Anchor, it can be like 10 or more colors in a color family. So that's always nice and helps for designers, because your colors aren't all over the map. More of them are in color families. I know, Serena, you like the DMCs, so what's your opinion?
I find the DMCs have a lot more jewel colors to them, which I really like. Everything, maybe it's my perception, but everything about Anchor seems to be a lot more earth tony, which I know you're a fan of. I'm less a fan of earth tones. I'm a winter. But, yeah, it basically comes down to that. Like, I know there's a lot of earth tone in DMC, and I'm sure there's a lot of jewel colors in Anchor. But I'm also a lot more familiar with DMC. You know, when you're picking a full set, you kind of get right down and dirty in there.
Yeah, I think we're both getting very familiar with the DMC colors.
But, yeah, it basically comes down to, I like the colors more in DMC more than anything about color fastness or anything else.
Okay. All right, so the upshot of all that is that there isn't a lot of difference. They're the same length, the same weight, the same size strands. All of the technical details are all the same. So basically it comes down to personal preference. Also, you'll find a lot of European patterns are kitted in Anchor, although most of them also give you DMC colors. Whereas in North America, we favor the DMC.
Really?
Yeah.
I've never seen that.
Yeah.
Mostly because I buy my patterns on Etsy.
And yeah, probably mostly North American.
Probably.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that's it for this episode of our Magic Hour Happy Stitching Cross Stitch. Okay, well, let's try that again. Magic Hour Cross Stitch Supplies Happy Stitching Podcast. All right. You could do that part next time. Thank you for joining us.
And what are our socials?
Okay, Facebook is / Magic Hour Cross Stitch. On Etsy, you'll find us at Magic Hour Cross Stitch, or you can just Google us, Magic Hour Cross Stitch Supplies, and you'll find our website, our Facebook page, our Etsy shop, our podcast, our YouTube channel. We have lots of stuff out there, so look us up and enjoy.
And we'll update it someday.
Yeah, we're working on it. We've been very busy. Our little shop is really growing, so this is a good thing. We're getting to it now. Look, here we are. So if you have any questions, never hesitate to reach out and ask us about anything. If we don't know the answer, we'll find out. We love questions. And if you're in the Niagara Falls, Ontario area, why don't you let us know, and we would love to have you come by the shop. By appointment, please, because there's just the two of us, and sometimes we work from home. So let us know you're coming, and we'll make sure we're there. And we'll hope to meet you later.
I'm Serena.
I'm Donna, and that's it for this episode. Thanks for joining us.